Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your friend. I'm punching something over to you so you can punch him too. Host Madelyn.
I am your the evil is defeated host Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Talk This. Here, it's the first weekend of February, and it's time for our past 7 weeks in gaming. Emma, you were so prescient to be like, let's not make it 8 weeks. That would be bad.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
Would have been disaster.
It would have been disastrous, yeah.
Already this episode, I haven't even recorded it, and I can tell you it's long.
Mm-hmm.
But another week might have just been out of control.
Would have been bad.
I'm not sure I would have had any more games to add, but I just would have had more to say.
Next time is also going to be bad. We're going to have, for me,
Yeah.
we're just going to have bad ones for a while.
We'd like to talk about games. Would you believe that?
Amazing.
Anyway, 7 weeks of gaming, and if you follow Talk This, you'll know. If you've listened to the last 6 weeks of gaming, if you follow us at all, you'll know that we have a lot to talk about a lot of games, a lot to say. Big Talk This 7 weeks.
Speaking of which, can I
you
start?
You asked me how many games I played before we started, but I didn't ask you, so I don't know who should start. It's you,
I should start.
Because it's the update.
Yes. The final Cold Steel 4 report
Wah!
of the podcast.
Unbelievable.
Forever.
Do they have New Game Plus?
Yes, I think they do have New Game Plus.
Ruh-roh.
In Cold Steel 2, you get new story content in New Game Plus, which I did not do. I looked it up on YouTube.
Good.
However many years ago that was.
A sane decision. I have to say, by the way, Click Boyfriend was talking to me about this. He was like, I listened to one of these recently, and Emma did the Cold Steel report, and, like, I don't know what's going on in that game. He was like, I don't understand it. She talks about it, and it's like, I don't know. I'm just like, okay, sure. Reen. She's got feelings about Reen.
I think that's probably the vibe. I probably should have been giving, like, little story summaries in these updates, but I think it's fine like this, too.
But I did say to him that, here's an idea for you if you ever feel like you have a lot of extra time for podcast-related things. If you wanted to make a bonus Talk This episode that just took all of your Cold Steel reports and stitched them one after the other
together, yeah,
that might be. I mean, it sounds like a lot of work,
but I could do it.
However,
but yes, I finished the game. It makes you get the bad ending first before you can get the true ending, even if you already have the prerequisites for the true ending. It's kind of stupid. So
Taylor said she couldn't do it.
I was the guide that I follow for this, because I need a guide for these, suggested that I would have had to do the final boss, the not final boss, the fake final boss again. But that's only if you haven't previously fulfilled the prerequisites before doing the bad ending. If you're already done with it, you can skip that. So I was very relieved about that. It was just the final boss that I had to do for the true ending.
It sounds like it had a real boss rush at the end.
It sure does.
Good. All games should, really.
Yeah, it's very it's very Kingdom Hearts 3 boss rush.
Yes.
This would be good. Unfortunately, I've been reflecting on Cold Steel as a series and on Cold Steel 4 as a game. And I think one of probably my most major issue with it is that I have not found the villains compelling throughout all of it, basically. Crow was really good in Cold Steel 1 and 2, but he's sort of like, he's a protagonist and a villain, right? So he's a little bit built in there to work with it. There's one guy named McBurn who should not be in this final boss rush. He should be a secret boss, for what it's worth, because he should be harder to sort of sell him. And also, everything he's doing there is setting up future stuff, not, like, tying in with the finale of Cold Steel 4 in any way. But he's very cool.
And very Talk This branded. McBurn,
yeah,
I love
McBurn.
that.
You can borrow that if you need
will.
it. But I find him really compelling, which, good sign. Maybe means I will like the future games, because he seems to just be there to set up future stuff. It's very funny. Before his boss fight, they introduced like 3 new concepts that have never come up before in the series. And then don't return to them for the rest of the game. Nice. They're just there. Have you ever thought about why you can't leave the continent? And I'm like, no, Cold Steel 4, but that's fascinating. It has nothing to do with what's going on here, but I'm down for it.
Love a good thought experiment.
I love Spooky can't leave the continent, even though it seems like there's more world out there. That's neat. And the other one is that it didn't really feel like the ending sort of had... It felt like they sort of jammed in some of like the bigger themes at the end, rather than the end sort of serving as a coalescence of those themes. Like, I think throughout the whole series, the 2 themes that have been consistent throughout the whole series, the first 2 had kind of like a class reflection going on that's totally dropped by 3 and 4 for better, I think. But the 2 ones are like, self-sacrifice is just harmful to the people around you. And the march of scientific progress, particularly when it is driven by the military, is very scary. Are like the 2
both themes that will come up in Yakuza 8, Infinite Wealth, Like a Dragon 8, Infinite Wealth.
And they sort of put that at the end there, but it doesn't feel like it's fully earned or coalescent. The bad ending is the bad ending because Rin gives into his self-sacrificial urge again, basically, and sort of sacrifices himself. Although I think they could have retooled the bad ending, because I like the concept of the bad ending better than like, oh, we got this Deus Ex Machina device from the other boss we fought, and now we can use it to seal the big bad guy and we can beat him up now. The bad ending was like Rin took in like the evil god and then went to space to sort of seal him outside in the stars.
I'm
right?
just imagining Clickbait Boyfriend listening to this right now, like hearing that.
Well, in his mech. So Rin and his mech sort of take the evil god within
even
him.
Better. Absolutely.
And then
Rin and his mech take the evil god to space. Great. I'm sold.
And Crow and Milliam, who are your 2 classmates who are like existing beyond death, your zombie classmates who are really supposed to die, who have... Do you remember Rin saved Crow with the power of capitalism and hugs?
Yeah. I do.
But they're like, once this god is defeated, their time's up, essentially. So they decide to go with Rin into space, but they all make a promise, like, we're gonna come back, you know? And like, there could have been something interesting there with like the parallels from the beginning to the end, and maybe you could have had an epilogue where it's like, maybe he is back, you know, maybe they found a way, you know, or whatever. But the bad ending is mostly, it has a lot of cool concepts that I liked, but it's very aborted and short because it's the bad ending, which is a shame, basically. But I love my kids. Cold Steel 3 is probably my favorite of the games, I think. I think that Rin's relationship with his students, and the students' relationship to each other is probably the best part of it. Really, up till like right after you rescue Rin in Cold Steel 4 is probably my favorite part of these games, where you're just hanging out with the kids doing their stuff.
No Rin.
No Rin. I liked the saving of Rin part of it as well. But yeah, just like the themes don't really feel like they finish. There's a couple of like aborted character arcs that I feel like maybe will get sort of finalized in Reverie, which is sort of like an epilogue to this sort of era of Trails. And the villains just didn't work for me. I found it hard to fully understand what the plan was. I didn't really feel like their motivations were good enough. I don't know. Maybe some of that's on me because I played it really slow. Maybe I'm forgetting stuff, or things just aren't clicking because I took such long breaks in between like seeing things. So maybe some of that's on me. But whatever. Look forward to a break from any Rin news. I will probably go play Reverie. I think that will be like a breaking point on whether I want to continue the series, because I know people who don't like Cold Steel do like Reverie, right? Or at least there's a sizable contingent. So if I also don't like this, I think that'll be the place where I'm like, okay, that's enough Trails for me.
Like, watch as our download numbers just plummet. Everyone just heard Emma say no more Cold Steel.
I know. They were like,
out.
what will I do without Reen? I made a tier list for myself. Reen, simultaneously, like, A, B rank character, and extreme F rank character.
Yeah.
Depending on whether the game wants to let him be interesting or not.
It's for those of us who are like that in life, too, it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult to be an A, B rank sometimes and a Supreme F rank other times, you know? Just rough.
And that's sort of how I feel about Cold Steel 4 as a whole, too, just to sum it up. It's not really like, you know, like on my backlogged or whatever, I put it at 3 stars, but it's really not that. It's really more of like a 4.5-star game and a 1-star game simultaneously. The stuff it does well, I think, is really cool. The stuff it does poorly genuinely sucks the life out of me. And that's sort of the summary.
Well, wow, the end of an era.
Yeah.
The pause of the end of an era, at least.
Pause of the end of the era.
Well, the game that I played the most of, I think in the first, like, half of the 7 weeks, was that I finished The Last of Us 2. I went back. Woohoo! Yeah, first finish, I think, first finish of 2024.
I think so, unless you finish something else.
I believe so. So yeah, I went back. I was looking when we recorded in mid-December. I thought I had played more of this, but I didn't. I'd only played about like 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
So I played most of the game in sort of those first couple weeks of January. I think I enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A lot of mixed feelings about this game out there in the world. And I think a lot of the things, at least of like concerns when it came out, were not things that super bothered me. Like, for instance, so many of the reviews of this game are like, oh, it's so violent. Like, the violence is so sickening, right? And like, it is, but it didn't bother me that much.
Yeah.
Like, it's very violent, but you just get used to it right away.
I think that the marketing of this game and everything Neil Druckmann says about this game really hurts it the more that you know about it. Like, I remember, like, the second trailer for this was the scene where, like, Abby's getting, like, strung up with a rope and they break Yara's arm with a hammer. It's just that scene. And, like, that should not be... That should not be your second trailer, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
And, like, I just fundamentally think Neil Druckmann doesn't understand the game he made. So...
I think that's probably valid. But yeah, having come into it, like, you know, I didn't love having to kill the dogs, right? Yeah. Of course, right? But they're also so annoying that it's like, okay, yeah. Right? I now literally cannot sneak, so I'll just give up.
I didn't kill any dogs except for the one you have to.
Well, good for you. I killed tons of them.
But I used the navigational assistance option from the accessibility menu. So
I did not do that. So I just got sniffed out by a bunch of them and murdered them. Anyway, all this to say that none of my top threshold for violence is the, like, Yakuza 5, I think, ish, heat action, and it then appears in other games where you drag someone's face across the concrete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing will ever be as viscerally horrifying as that. So, like, you know, crushing someone's skull or whatever in my pursuit for revenge, you know, eventually it's just sort of like, okay, yeah, that's what it is. Fine. So I sort of felt like, okay, as long as you come into it, expect, like, if you've played the first game, this is more violent than that, but I don't think that it's, like, so much more violent than that it felt, I don't know, whatever. That didn't bother me, basically. I do think I agree with the broad consensus that the game is a bit too long.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't personally mind the like bopping around Seattle, looking for loot, chatting about Seattle's past in the Ellie section, which added a bunch of time, I'm sure. But like, I love running around looking for stuff in this game, so that's fine. I think my biggest complaint was that Seattle Day 1 with Abby really dragged for me. And I just think that that's because they don't really do enough to onboard you to the Scars versus Wolves dynamic until sort of like the very end of that day or even day 2. So while I remember thinking, during the Ellie segment, I was like, oh, she's killing a lot of people indiscriminately here, and we don't seem to be reckoning with that in any way. But like, okay, sure. Like in Pursuit of Violence, she's just killing anyone who gets in her way. Or in Pursuit of Revenge, she's killing anyone who gets in her way. Like, okay. Like I can notice that as that's a beat. It did make it a little bit weird. Like killing that many people and like dogs and everything. The moments that are baked into the story where she has a strong reaction to like torturing someone and then killing someone who is pregnant feel a little bit outsized, given that she has killed hundreds of people on the way. But
Sure. I think that there's enough narrative justification there for why those particular moments affect her more.
I'm not saying they're not justified. I was just saying I did have a reaction initially to both of those that was a little bit like on one hand I get this, on the other hand the weight of it feels a little bit off balance, given that you had absolutely no reaction to killing probably dozens to hundreds of innocent-ish people on your way in. And I think that's more of a critique of like, maybe with navigational assistance you felt differently. I didn't feel that stealth was a super viable, like stealth where you didn't ultimately lead everyone to your corner of death where you strangled them all, which was my favorite strategy. I didn't feel like actually stealthing your way through levels was a super viable strategy in this game. Maybe if you're better at the game than me.
I do think I wish every game had navigational assistance. The way it was is you could click in on one of your joysticks and it would sort of give you a general indicator of the correct direction to go. And I just turned it on because I get lost in every video game. So I do think that probably had an impact. There were definitely a lot of encounters where I could avoid at least some enemies.
Yeah.
I did a lot of crawling.
Yeah.
So that might have impacted my experience through both Ellie and Abby's sections as well.
That's fair. Speaking of assistance, the hint function was in like 3 areas of the game 100% necessary, or I would not have figured out what I was supposed to do. But it did make me angry when I was just sort of like looking for loot and the game was like, "You spent too long here. Want a hint?" And I'm like, "Shut up.
I don't remember the hints."
I know exactly where I'm supposed to go, but if I can't find another scissor, I'll lose my mind."
Must have blocked it out. Must have blocked the hints and stuff out.
Maybe you just didn't spend as much time running around trying to check every single drawer.
Maybe.
Anyway, all this to say that I felt in day 1 of Abby's Seattle, the game did not quickly enough explain to me like literally anything that was going on with Scar. I was just like, "You're gonna go kill some Scars now." And while in Ellie's portion, I was like, okay, yeah, of course she doesn't care who she's killing. Like, she's single-minded focus. Everyone else is collateral damage. That feels in line with the story being told. I had trouble with, and there's another big instance of this later in the game sometimes seems to have, like, withheld information from me, the player, that the characters have in a way that was perhaps a little manipulative or at least confusing.
Can you give me an example?
Well, the example I'm talking about right now is that Abby obviously understands what's going on with the like wolves and Scars dynamic, and took me a long time to catch up to exactly what was even happening or like who these people were.
Okay.
That's the confusing part. More significant spoilers now here, I guess. We talked about this a little bit when I finished the game, but I did sort of feel like the game letting me believe that Ellie and Joel's last interaction was a fight for the entire game, only to reveal at the end that it wasn't.
They don't do that for the entire game, though.
Okay, I felt like they did.
I mean, at the very beginning sections, Ellie talks to Dina about how she's going to watch a movie with Joel that evening.
I know. But it wasn't clear to me that, like...
And you don't find out that Ellie knows about her thing until pretty much the end of her section, about what Joel did at the end of the first game, until pretty much the end of her section. And you don't see their last interaction until right before the ending. Right before
the last interaction part is what I'm talking about. I just felt like... It felt to me like the game, if not outright hid, made it seem like they hadn't talked since the fight that got talked about a lot. You don't have to agree with this. This is just my experience of the game, that I played through the game feeling like they had that fight and they hadn't talked. And so I felt like that in some ways colored what I thought Ellie was feeling, and her feelings were probably slightly different. And anyway, it felt a little bit manipulative to me, but that's you know. It was just interesting as a contrast of this game sometimes felt like it withheld information for, like, narrative development purposes. Whereas in 1, I thought it was interesting how the game made sure that, like, you are not these characters in very different ways in 1 and 2. Sure. Joel was, like, so Stonewall, you can't know anything about him. Like, you don't get internal very much. And this game felt more like, we have staged these internal things for you. And that was just an interesting change between the two for me.
I see.
Let's see. Overall, yeah, talking about the ending a little bit here. Look, I'll acknowledge your point that you made to me recently that the game is probably better understood as being about grief. But if I'm going to take Druckmann at his word, that it's about the cycle of revenge, then hey, yeah, maybe that thing they revealed recently where like they were like, we were gonna have somebody random come after Ellie at the end. I was like, I had that idea. That was my idea. And it's terrible in some ways, but if the game is really about the cycle of revenge, then, like, absolutely that's what you should have done. Why did you cut that? That was what I wanted Abby to be all along.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I just think there's just so many things where I'm like, oh, this is about the cycle of revenge. Why did you do that? Like, that final scene with Joel and Ellie is so soft. It's such a soft scene to allow to happen if this game is about, like, what revenge takes from you.
Yeah. And I feel like if that is how you take the game, it does become a lot weaker as a story.
Yeah.
Interestingly. Like, I felt like there's obviously issues with The Last of Us Part 2. I agree that's too long. I see your complaints. I don't fully agree with all of them, but I see where they're from. But I got a lot out of it, and not because I was thinking about, like, how revenge is bad, right? And I think some of that's on just the marketing. In that the marketing of The Last of Us Part 2 outright lied, in terms of, like, they put Joel in scenes where he's not there, and really felt like it was trying to play up this, like, revenge thing. I don't know. I just wonder if, like a lot of people went into it colored by that, which is totally fair, right? But I think it has more meat to it than what even its creators want to give it credit for sometimes. And I'm really scared to see how they'll do it in the TV show. I think it will be bad.
I agree with that. One final note on your grief versus revenge thing. I do think that if you interpret it as a game about grief, and again, maybe if you were able to sneak through more, this feels like less of a...
Sure. I also read, I think I read an article, or maybe it was on Something Rotten. I listened to the Something Rotten podcast on The Last of Us Part 2. That talked a little bit about it, like connecting to it as a story about addiction too, which I thought was an interesting angle to take.
You mean from the perspective that both Ellie and Abby will just chug any pill that they find?
Yeah, no, not like that. Not like that.
No, I just feel like the one problem where if you like turn it into a game about something that isn't revenge is that I think that the moment to moment gameplay starts to feel brutal in a way that doesn't necessarily connect with those themes. Which is okay. That's like a constant problem.
I mean, you could take it more, if you take it more abstractly, of like the hurt you can inflict on people around you while you're hurt, for example. I think that still can work for me personally. But totally. I see what you're saying.
That's all I'm saying. So like there just feels like a little more of a disconnect. Also in a game about grief, I should be able to just rush up to Abby and kill her and not get a screen that's like, don't rush up to her or Ellie. Whatever it is, that one-on-one fight.
She's got a knife though.
Whatever, man. I've got muscles. Oh, here's my musical reference for people before I let this go. So that scene where Ellie and Abby fight, I had like saved right before that, and so I got the little scene title in the menu when I came in. It's called The Confrontation. Mm-hmm. Takes place in a theater. Big fight between two like really major characters, and it's a huge disappointment to me that there was no
singing
counterpoint duet.
Me too.
You know, you know nothing of Ellie, right? Like moment.
Exactly.
So missed opportunity for a musical moment. TV show gonna be just absolute trash, I think.
Yeah.
Just hard for me to imagine how this works.
Yeah.
Given the all like having to wade into all of the like political, to put it mildly, stuff, the decision to not really have very many zombies, the like Deus Ex, we need to make sure Abby and Ellie are together at the end, so Abby's gonna get kidnapped by slavers, like just like all the giant set piece, like it's just gonna be messy.
Yep.
The Tommy gets shot in the face but doesn't die, but Jesse does.
Tommy gets shot like in his cheekbone, if you look at it closely.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Whatever, dude. When it was a jump scare when he came back. That whole ending, I was that whole scene in the farmhouse, I was like, this is a dream from Ellie. Like she's gotten knocked out. She's having a dream of a future she wants to have. There's no way Dina still has the baby. Whatever. Everybody's dead. And then I was like, oh no. It's real.
All right. I got Game Pass for a month.
Best deal in gaming.
Best deal in gaming. I played Yusant in the interest of saving time. You can go listen to last week. It was good. I liked it. I also played Thirsty Suitors, which was a late last year release. It's a turn-based RPG where you fight emotional confrontations with your exes. So you're Jala Jairatna, I think. You've just returned to town after running away with the mayor's daughter, who is about twice your age at the time. Or 10 years older, maybe not twice your age. Sure. And you've been dumped and you've come back to your hometown, and in your hometown are waiting for you 6 of your exes who you did not treat very well over the course of living in your town. So it takes place over like a week or so, and over the course of the week, like you can deal with each of your exes and have like a turn-based battle where they lay out their grievances with you, and you come to a emotional understanding and reconciliation.
Have you ever read Some Girls, like Neil LaBute?
I don't think so.
Okay, it's like a play where a terrible guy goes around, like he's getting married, he's like going to see all of his exes. Anytime there's a thing where it's like someone goes through all their exes, I'm like, did they read this play?
Yeah.
Neil LaBute is like a bad guy, I think, by the way, so I'm not like recommending. Like Fat Pig is a play that has not aged well at all, for instance. But anytime there's a play that's about like someone going to, or a piece of media that's about someone going through all their exes, I'm like, interesting.
This one feels a little bit more like Scott Pilgrim inspired, except you're like the evil X.
Love that.
You also, there's like you're dealing with your family, who you also like haven't talked to since you ran away, and there's also cooking mini games and skateboarding. Like moment to moment, super fun, super creative, lots of cool stuff going on. But it sort of feels like something that was longer and then at some point in development was cut shorter. The most obvious example of this is, and maybe this is just a case of like wording it badly, but like you go and you discover that your grandma, your Pati, is coming from India over here because your sister's getting married. And it says that she's coming at the end of the month. So maybe the end of the month is only a week away, and I just didn't know that because there's not like a calendar or something. But then it's like reintroduced later, and Jala's like, "What? Pati's coming?" I'm like, "We established this on the first day." And it also feels like the pace of the X's picks up near the end of the game in a way that doesn't leave them all like room to breathe character-wise. So it feels like it's a little bit condensed. There's this whole subplot with like there's like a cult in the skate park that apparently I failed to break up the cult. I don't really know why. It doesn't feel super connected to everything else that's going on, which is why it also feels like maybe that was part of like a bigger plot when a game was longer or something. But still, I really enjoyed it. It's quite fun. The writing's quite good. The concept's quite good. Just not fully cohesive. But like while you're playing it, this is just like upon reflecting after the fact, but like while you're playing it, really fun. I also tip to games, when you end, don't dump me right into the epilogue and make me think that like there's actually an epilogue and not that's just like you can keep doing skate challenges. Take me back to the main menu and then I can re-enter the game because you're undercutting your sense of finality.
Take note, games. Take note.
That's my hot tip.
So I think I think I started this in late. I can't remember. No, I must have. I started this in late 2023 here because I was at home when I started it. I finally started Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, which I've played a bunch of, although I think it is going to start to get a bit of the short shrift over these next few weeks. That's okay. What is going on in the plot of this game? I don't really know, nor do I care. There's a war. We're all at war, right?
It's sort of just like a slightly altered, shortened take on the plot of Three Houses anyway, so...
No, that's fine. I get that much. I'm just like, we're talking about, there's just a lot of like alliance politics happening, and I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah, there were a lot more politics talking in this one from my Blue Lions playthrough too. Just like, sure.
This game seems to think I wanted more of that.
Yeah.
Which in some ways, for the Alliance, in some ways I do. I do wonder how that plays over in the Kingdom and the Empire. The Alliance does feel like more politicking should be something that's part of that story. Yes, surprise, surprise, folks. You might remember from long ago that the route I played in Fire Emblem Three Houses was Golden Deer. So, had to be Golden Wildfire here.
Is that what it's called? I don't remember what mine was called.
Yeah. So we're liking that. This game is just so... I mean, it's an ideal Warriors game, right? One of these, like, you go around fighting bunches of enemies, mashing buttons, every once in a while doing powerful attacks. It's just so perfectly nothing. So purely numbers go up. Which is good. It's like a good game. It's been a good game for me to have as like a play it to like trick my brain into catching up on some work kind of game. I've enjoyed playing it on the longer subway rides, although not shorter ones, because I finished my books and I haven't gotten back to the library to get some new books yet. Will the team here just keep telling different stories with these characters forever? They could probably just print money forever doing that, right?
I mean, they made Engage since
I'm not saying it's the only thing. I'm just saying if they released a Fire Emblem 3H like every couple of years for the next decade, I think
the Persona 5 route? The Persona
Exactly.
route?
That's exactly what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
I feel like they have their Persona 5 in their hands here, and they could keep doing that if they wanted to.
It's not even fair to say Persona 5. Atlas been doing that since Persona 3. They've mastered it by Persona 5.
Sure, but Persona 5 feels like, yes, the pinnacle encapsulation. Anyway, yeah, like I said, it doesn't, like, we're the Golden Deer, we've jumped forward in time. The system remembered that Violet's name was Mad Dog in my run, so that was nice. And my character's name is McOp, inspired by the Gen Alpha slang.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like McOp. You know, I like getting to upgrade all of my things. Like, I like that the supports feel like, oh, I don't have to, like, meticulously plan how I'm doing all of these, right? Like, it's good. It's taken away a lot of the pressure, the time pressure of Three Houses that made it, like, a game that you had to actually play, and just allows me to just be like, oh, let's hit some buttons.
Yeah, I actually liked a lot of the supports in Three Hopes, because there's less of them, they feel a little bit more cohesive, and like they can reference things better too.
Yeah.
So they sort of found an improvement there.
I would agree. They also seem to be laying the groundwork potentially. I don't expect them to pay off on this, to do something slightly more interesting with Claude's character in this one. There's already starting to be, like, one of the first big moments is, like, he's the leader of the Alliance. And in one of the early chapters in this, like, flash-forward war that we're in, it looks like Lawrence's dad, Duke Gloucester, Count Gloucester, whatever his name is, has defaulted to the Empire, right? And Lawrence is, like, really upset, but he's going to stay here, and everyone's sort of like, that traitor, and they fight a fight, and it turns out it's all been a big scheme, right, from Claude. That Claude was like, you're going to make it look like you defaulted so you can flip back over to our side. And of course, later, Lawrence's dad is like, you know, I would have stayed in the Empire if it looked bad. But Claude knew that, too. So everyone is kind of like Lawrence in particular is a little bit pissed at Claude. He's like, you didn't tell me this. Like, why didn't you tell me this? Why did you let me think that, like, my dad was a bad guy? And his dad was like, well, it's because I didn't want you to be, like, implicated in this at all if things went bad. But, like, there's starting to be more seeds of people being like, I don't know, like, can we trust Claude? And Claude also being like, I don't know, like, can I really keep all these plates spinning at this rate forever? Which feels like it could go somewhere interesting, but also I'm not actually betting on it going anywhere interesting. If it was going to go somewhere interesting, it would probably be like Claude is actually kind of a bad guy. Or like he does something really bad that leads to things that are bad for these people. But I kind of doubt we're going to go there. We'll see.
There's a somewhat similar beat on the Blue Lions thing that they didn't really do anything with, but it was on a little smaller key than I think what's happening over in your playthrough, so.
Just in every chapter, he seems to be lying about something. He's like, oh, this person told me this was fine, when he was like, actually, they didn't respond when I sent a letter, so I assumed that meant it was fine. Mm-hmm. So I'll be interested to see. That's the only part of the story that I'm especially interested in. The, like, slow creep of battling off the Empire, who's not even at war with us, really, is not especially interesting to me. We'll see, though. And how many times will Ferdinand get away without us killing him? Like 3 so far.
Ferdinand died unceremoniously off screen in my Blue Lions one.
Probably because we're going to kill him.
Maybe.
Anyway, enjoying it. Would recommend it if you need something, like, pretty empty. Feels like it's going to take a long time to finish, though. Over to you.
Alright, I finished Radiant Historia, Perfect Chronology.
Perfect.
Amazing the impact. Younger me did not understand the beauty of the DS system. Amazing what an impact is of, like, playing on your DS. Because, like, Radiant Historia, fine. It's a fine game. But you know what? It's a fine game that I played on my DS very cozily, you know? And that's kind of elevates it. I think of it, I feel fond about it, where if I had played it on my PlayStation 5, I don't think I would in the same way. Does that make sense?
It does.
And Anyway, it was okay. The perfect chronology stuff, this is like a remake and it has a little bit of additional content and some new endings. It feels a little tacked on. It feels bad to me that in this cut, the only characters that get a bad ending are like the two guys in Granorg Kingdom who are like, hey, maybe having a monarchy is bad and we should start our own kingdom. That's better. And they're the only ones in the perfect chronology ending who are punished. So that's a weird little beat.
Speaking of questionable politics.
Radiant Historia, very pro-monarchy. But it's okay. I also thought there was like some dynamics that weren't explored enough, like when the connection between Erica and Stock is revealed, like it feels kind of nothing. I don't know. If I was Erica, I would be very emotional in various degrees to discover that my brother was alive. Spoilers, I guess. I feel like this is very obvious from the minute you meet Erica, so maybe not spoilers. But it just, they don't really explore that relationship very much. And the fact also that, like, there's this desertification that's happening because of something an older civilization did that's sort of draining the life force from the planet. And the only way that this
is a
stops...
much more common beat in games than every episode for the past month we've been like, either it's flooded or it's turned into a desert. Continue.
But the only way this stops, and this is the most interesting and I think successful part of the game, is sort of this original layout, is every generation of Granorg royalty performs a ritual sacrifice, essentially, of one of its children. And essentially makes the other child kill them in order to stop the desertification. So there's this convoluted thing where, like, they die, and then they sort of, like, they live and are prepared for their place of the sacrifice by borrowing part of, like, their sibling's soul for a while. And then when they come of age, their sibling takes the part of their soul back and kills their sibling for good. It is funky, and the part that's most successful, I think, is like Stock's reckoning with being a sacrifice, and like the idea of many people over time giving their lives to keep the world going, and whether this is really a solution that's good, right? Like, should we be doing that? Should we be doing ritual sacrifices every generation? Or is that maybe bad? And so that part's interesting. So I had a good time with it. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect chronology, you might say. But it's cozy to play on the DS. I like the way that the time travel mechanics work, and sort of the solutions you find for things by jumping back and forth between different timelines. I like the main idea of the perfect chronology editions, where you're like introduced to a bunch of possible futures as well, in addition to like your major branching paths. And getting to see like different like little short story ideas outside of the main story as well was cool. So that's my Radiant Historia review. Gameplay also fun.
Story good. Gameplay also fun.
Yeah.
Well, you've been waiting for it, listeners. Finally, in this 7 weeks, Click Boyfriend returned to the United States for the first time since July.
Woohoo! And
for the first time since the release of Trine 5, A Clockwork Conspiracy.
Oh, yeah!
I'm gonna say it. We haven't finished it yet, and ruh-roh, listeners, it's gonna be down to the wire if we finish this before Clickbait Boyfriend flies back to Spain tonight. We'll see. Will we be able to play probably 3 levels in a day? Historically, no. But we'll find out. Mm-hmm. It's his fault. We would have gotten farther, except that he was very jet-lagged this week being here because he's been all over the world. And genuinely, we were playing through a level. This was the funniest thing that he was falling asleep, like, in between. Like, one time, he was, like, Pontius, and he, like, jumped onto a log, and, like, it would, like, sink into the water. You had to jump before it drowned. And he jumped onto it, and then he fell asleep before he could jump off.
Oh, man. Gotta toughen up for the sake of Trine.
I know.
Trine 5.
I know. Because if we don't finish it, we will not get to play it again probably until July.
Horrifying.
Which will be a weird little Talk This update for the 6 weeks in the summer. Anyway, I'm going to say it. Trine 5, strong contender for the best Trine. Which is wild. Would not have been what I expected, because Trine 4, I think, is my second worst Trine, probably. Maybe right in the middle, but I think second worst. Trine 4 had too many of the edges sanded off. It was too clean. It felt too much like there were, like, really intended solutions to puzzles, and, like, your powers unlocked at too fixed an interval across the game. Trine 5 feels like a return to the glory days of Trine 2. Not quite. Trine 2 is so unhinged. What I've loved about Trine 2, Trine, if you're not familiar, is a series where you play as 3 characters, Amadeus the Wizard, Zoya the Thief, and Pontius the Knight, to solve platforming-y, physics-y, sometimes, puzzles, and move through your fantasy world, your beautiful fantasy world, with a little bit of story. Anyway, what was great about Trine 2 is that it had no locks on ability progression at all. So you could just, like, as you gathered a bunch of gems, set it up so that Amadeus could right away summon, like, 5 items. And just everything was just a broken, like, let's build a giant tower of blocks and jump through this. And that was really wonderful. And I think Trine 5 understands that I want to do that. And, like, it, like, knows that I want to do that as a player. Right? So while it has only just here at the end, near the end of the game, allowed me to unlock being able to do 6 blocks at a time, it did that right at the same moment as I am required to be able to summon 3 at a time. So the fact that the upgrade from 3 at a time is you can summon 6 at a time, I was like, you get me. You understand what I want to do. Similarly, like, you know, Pontius has a recurring ability where you can, like, glide with his shield. That makes a lot of the platforming much easier. You can unlock that right away. Right? So there's just a lot of little things that are like, oh, you get it. You know I want to cheese through this a little bit. And, like, you're not hiding too much of that from me. So I like that a lot. Yeah, so it's like, it's got some of the polish, and it's beautiful as always. And I do like, there's some new abilities that I think mostly are quite good. Zoya can now eventually shoot an arrow, like, any place that she attaches her rope, she can, like, teleport to. That's been a good addition. Pontius now has a little, like, double guy that you can summon, who can walk through, you know, vents and that sort of thing. That's good. Pontius is, like, his shield can generate light that can freeze things in the air. Is a little weird, a little baked on, but that's okay. And there have been puzzles where we have gotten genuinely stumped a couple times, and had to, like, come back later. One of those took place during this Click Like Boyfriend very sleepy period, and he, like, the next day was like, I know how to do this immediately upon looking at it. So I think we were just not operating at full brain power, full brain trust capacity. But the puzzles have been a little more challenging sometimes, and they apparently have a hard mode where they get even more challenging that we are not playing on. They said, don't do this the first run through, so I didn't. But the main thing that this game, I feel like, has dangled in front of me, intentionally or not, is one of the main story beats of this game. First of all, one of the main story beats of this game is that the Trine trio were tricked into essentially nuking their town.
Oops.
Like, and they were like, oops. They thought that they were saving the town, but instead they blew it up, and now everybody hates them.
Great.
So it's really reckoning with, like, legacy.
Yeah.
In a way that will come up again on this episode, I think. They're the same game, basically. But also something that's happened is, well, Amadeus, the wizard's wife, has left him. I'm starting to feel kind of invested in these characters. I hate to say it. But Amadeus, the wizard's wife, has left him after years of him sort of mistreating her. So, uh-oh. But then the triplets, his triplets, who were born in game 1, who can cast Fireball spell even though he cannot, were kidnapped. But they're young adults now, and we get to see them. And I'm like, oh, the triplets. Triplets with powers. Trying the next generation, anyone? I was like, can we have a level where we play as the triplets? And that does not seem like it's going to happen. But I think that is a direction that they could and should go in. So yeah, really recommend Trine 5. You got to start from the beginning for the story.
You're right. No skipping ahead.
But the Trine 5 really, really peak. Do you have 2 left?
Yeah, I have one short one and then the big one.
Excellent. Short one.
I played Frog Detective Trilogy.
Nice.
You play as Frog Detective.
Good.
The second best investigator, right under Lobster Cop.
Sure.
Who is, in fact, the world's best investigator. And you are, sent out by your supervisor to solve mysteries in the world, not crime, because crime's not real. Mm-hmm. So they're basically just like little simple point and click little adventures. The first one's like half an hour, and the last one's like an hour and 20. But you have a scooter in that one, so you can scoot around.
Nice.
And it's essentially like, you look around the environment, you find things, you talk to people, they need something from you, and then when you give them something, they'll give you something else, and you take that to the next person. They're essentially point and click adventures like that. And so, the Frog Detective solves the haunted island, the invisible wizard mystery, and finally the case where everyone's hats have been stolen in Cowboy County.
My God.
And it's fun. It's nice. I like it. You're just a frog detective. You're talking to a bunch of weird little guys. They got weird little problems. And really, it's just a beautiful story about a frog attempting to find a hat that will fit his weirdly shaped head. And I think that's beautiful, honestly.
Been there.
You also get a notebook that you can decorate in the second one. So, that's good. You also have a magnifying glass that you, in fact, do not need to use, ever.
You're a detective, though. You have to have one.
It's just for emotional support, I guess. But genuinely, the third game's conclusion, very dramatic and emotional. So, I'm glad I played through all 3. I mean, altogether, they're like 2.5 hours, 3 hours, maybe tops. So, nice little trilogy of games about second best detective, Frog Detective.
Ribbit indeed. Well, my tiny game, before we get into the Like a Dragon ending segment of this long episode, just a quick note to say that I did play some more FTL in this past 7 weeks, and one time I knocked the game's difficulty down to easy just to see how it would go, and I did beat the game. Which was sort of embarrassing, but was also highly satisfying. I just finally, I had enough resources. I, souped my ship up. It was cool. So yes, I did finally beat the game, and over that process, not just that one, but in other ones too, I unlocked some new ships. So, look at me. I guess I could say I finished FTL, too. Second finish of the year. Actually, it might have been first finish of the year. I think I might have done this before The Last of Us Part 2. Okay, if you're not interested in hearing about Like a Dragon, or if you're afraid of spoilers for Gaiden, or spoilers through the middle of Chapter 4 for Infinite Wealth, this is the time to guard your ears.
Yeah, so I guess we'll just start. I finished Gaiden on, Christmas, I think.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Thematically appropriate. I liked that you could play dress up with Kiryu. I liked Agent style. feels a bit like a game that they built around like 3 scenes that they wanted to show.
Yeah, baby.
The plot of it is not very substantial,
Nope.
I think. I thought that the ending, I can't even remember his name. Who's the final boss of Gaiden? The scarred guy?
Yeah, that guy.
That guy. I thought his ending was like very cruel for the series.
I just hope it's setting up that everyone who's ever died in this game
it's just been taken by the Daidoji faction. Yeah. But I thought it was very cruel that like it's like he was, you know, sort of kept in containment by this one guy, and then he's just thrown into containment by another group that seeks to control him. I don't know. It struck me as kind of like, that's kind of mean for this villain.
Well, the alternative is prison, right?
Why would he go to prison?
Well, like all of
Does Kiryu call the cops on people? I don't know. He didn't really do anything directly where it's like he has to go to prison now.
Well,
I feel like he could have just
though. Like,
but like they didn't go to prison.
I'm just saying that, like, well, everyone else you see at any point in that game did spend some time in prison.
Sure, but once the Yakuza's dissolved, like, I mean, the beginning of Infinite Wealth is all about, like, they're having trouble reintegrating to society. It's not like they went around and arrested every ex-Yakuza.
I do think it draws an interesting character contrast between Kiryu and Ichiban, though. Like, Kiryu does not go, like, you should rehabilitate yourself.
Yeah.
It's just like, you have sinned, and you must atone.
But Kiryu doesn't have anything to do with it. They're just walking away from him, and then the Daidoji show up and are like, here, you're our dog now.
I know, but like I just think like the fact that he is not as like, oh, I'm gonna help you fix yourself.
Sure. That's all. That was like the one thing in Gaiden that felt like everything else is so insubstantial, and that felt like a bit of a sour note for me because it felt particularly mean to kind of just a guy.
Yeah.
I guess he betrayed Kiryu and didn't want the Yakuza to end or whatever, but still feels like he's just like a guy.
I
but anyway,
respect the narrative problem that guy would pose if he was just running around somewhere.
Fair enough. But the you know, like the 3 or 4 scenes that they wanted to have in Gaiden were quite good. I thought the ending was very emotionally affecting, even for me, who has not played through Kiryu's games. And then started Infinite Wealth. I should not have played the demo for Infinite Wealth, because it makes me want all of the abilities that were already unlocked in the demo to be there right away.
I know, you can't punch Kiryu's like live punchy thing. When do I get that?
I've not gotten it yet, and I'm ahead of you. So yeah. I just got combo attacks where you can combo attack with the person unlocked.
Oh, I got that.
Yeah, not the tag team where you just do a normal melee.
No, follow-ups.
No, not even when they knock them down, when you stand next to someone and they both attack. I just got that. Oh,
sick. I didn't even notice that in the demo. Oh, yeah. Man. This new combat system is so good.
So I just got that, and combat's feeling better. But I should not have played the demo because I felt very impatient with the combat for the first 3 chapters.
I think I benefited from playing only one of the demos.
Yeah.
Like, I did, like one big fight. And only, like, later on was I like, oh, yeah, like, I guess I don't have that ability yet. A Gaiden thought, I don't see how this would have functioned as something that was, like, woven through the game.
I think with some adjustments, it might have been, like, I know that, I've not gotten here, but I know that eventually Kiryu goes back to Japan.
Yeah.
And perhaps that could have functioned as flashbacks there. But, yeah. I'm not sure. It would have to be adjusted, obviously, but I'm sure it was adjusted to make it into a full game as well.
I just felt like if you hadn't seen any of that, Ichiban running into Kiryu in Japan, it would just feel like such a, like, okay, I guess. It still is sort of that, but, like...
It is still sort of that. I was a little confused because they sort of adjusted it to, like, they sent him on a mission to Hawaii rather than him being on vacation, which is sort of what it sounded like he was doing at the end of Gaiden.
I guess. I thought it was like, I mean, the mission is sort of it's a mission, but like they're sending him to Hawaii on purpose, sort of energy.
Yeah, I guess so. I just finished chapter 5, and no spoilers for that, but I feel like the game is finally clicking for me now. I know Like a Dragon is known for slow starts. It's too slow. That's my hot take. It's too slow. It just, especially chapter 1. And some of that is like, there have been maybe a couple too many things that I am like taking and holding on to, going like, that seems like it could not go, like they could really fumble this. And one of them is the psycho stuff.
Sure.
It in itself has some good moments, I think, but I don't love how it's carrying forth into the narrative.
I think it's a good story for Ichiban,
there.
and it's a fun story for Nanba and Adachi as side characters. I think it's unfortunate that it involves a character who was also a main character in 7.
Yes. Feels like it very much shortchanges Psycho. She hasn't even read his text in a year is a little bit rough as a writing beat, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this could go in ways that are very good or in ways that are very bad, and it's just like, which way are we going to go?
Yes, so that's why I'm holding on to it, right? It strikes me as something that they could really mess up, but I'm trying not to think about that right now. And there's a few other things like that have been throughout the 4 chapters. Just to put the other sort of, like, the portrayal of the Barracudas makes me a little uncomfortable. I think it's interesting because I don't think that they're approaching... The Barracudas is like the Latino gang of Hawaii.
Well, the non-Japanese gang of
They
Hawaii.
speak Spanish.
I guess that's true. Yes.
At least in the dub.
In mine, some of them speak Japanese.
Yes.
But, yeah, okay.
But they're like the Latino gang of Hawaii, and I don't think they're writing them that much different than how they write like various Japanese gangs. I think it's just because I am an American and am more aware of the different ways that Latino men are characterized in America, and it feels like it is hitting some of those sort of stereotypical beats.
Sure, some of those machismo type stereotypes.
Yes.
That make sense for gang, like are not as loaded for like East Asian gang leaders, perhaps.
Yes.
I haven't really got this, I'm just assuming.
But you are in the Barracuda's hideout now, right? Yeah.
Yes, but we haven't met like Danny Trejo, which I assume you have.
I have. The guy lifts his wallet and they crucify him was something that stood out to me as like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So just laying that out there. We'll see how that goes throughout.
Yeah.
But the big unforced error that I feel like we should talk about is the gosh darn cancer.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to that Kiryu's health situation is not really a spoiler, and just the like details of it are the spoilers. And also the details of it are sort of presented as like a maybe, I don't know. So I think your theory that it has to do with the sponsorship is interesting, although a little disappointing for me, wanting it to be all part of a big grand conspiracy.
He has had six symptoms though already, so
no, but I want it to be like they've tricked him into thinking that he's like sicker than he is.
I guess. I don't know. I still don't understand what the motivation for that would be, but we'll see. It
would be okay. So the game has presented it that a likely cause of Kiryu's terminal cancer is that at some point in 2020, I'm assuming this was Kiryu's like pandemic job.
Again, I don't understand why. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why is he working here? But whatever.
Because he just feels like he has to be atoning and giving something back to society at all times, and probably the Daidoji were like, just chill at the temple, and he was like, no, I want to help the world. I'm going to work at a nuclear waste plant. That feels, it's weird, but does not feel so out of character for the way Kiryu is treating his life right now.
Sure.
Or that, that him just sitting around, he was going to drive himself insane with grief. So he took a job that was going to be fully engaging. And
yes,
whatever.
but the gist is he was working at a nuclear waste plant. Someone driving a forklift had like a heart attack, drove it into a bunch of nuclear waste barrels. Kiryu went to go get him out so that he could evacuate with the other workers, gets conked on the head by, in sort of a comical beat, despite myself, by a barrel. His mask fully breaks, and he breathes in radioactive material. And he sort of finishes this anecdote by being like, but the cancer could have come from anywhere. We don't know.
Yeah.
But the implication is it's radioactive poisoning, essentially.
It's so funny because, of course, like, all of the reviews of Gaiden that, like, came out, like, we're very focused on, like, the cigarettes, right? And, like,
because it feels like it is. It's so weird.
And, like, the whole intro, by the way, still love the contrast of the intro for Gaiden being, like, Kiryu by himself smoking a cigarette, and the intro for Ichiban and 8 being, like, everybody loves him.
Yeah.
Love that. Hope that was intentional because I really like the parallel there. But yeah, they really did let everyone write a bunch about, like, his smoking forever. And then we're like, just kidding. He's the Hulk.
Yeah. I did see, so I saw someone speculate, like, on social media that RGG does use real brands for its cigarettes, and I think some of it's alcohol, too.
Yep, definitely some of it's alcohol.
And perhaps they did not feel like they needed to they felt like they needed to put in some other possible way Kiryu could have gotten cancer to avoid sort of talking about the smoking and drinking is bad for you sort of aspect of it. Which seems plausible to me at this point, but we'll see. I feel like even then they could have just been like, not addressed it. I don't know, but that would have been awkward in its own way as well. But sometimes people just get cancer. That's just sort of how cancer works.
And I just really think that being the case would have been a more powerful arc for Kiryu. Like, he's been this, like, remarkable person who remarkable things happen to over and over for his whole life. It's the same, circling back to my The Last of Us thing, where I'm like, it's not fair that Joel and Ellie get closure and nobody else does. Right?
Mm.
Like, it's sort of not fair that, like, Kiryu gets, like, special cancer. Like, it would be much more interesting if it's like, oh, the Dragon of Dojima just, like, is a person like everyone else.
Yeah.
But see, here's my hope. I can't remember his handler's name either. I've lost everyone's name.
Hanawa.
I hope that Hanawa was like, man, we gotta find a way to get Kiryu back reunited with his family. This agent thing, he's been doing it for like 8 years now. And we got to figure out a way. And so this is my grand conspiracy theory. Okay, this is not how it's going to play out, but this is how I would want it to play out. So it already is sort of suspicious that Kiryu was exposed to nuclear waste, and he works for this, like, government agency that presumably wants to continue to utilize him forever. And they weren't like, you were exposed to waste, you should be seeing a doctor regularly. Mm-hmm. Right? He's got this terminal 6 months to live cancer, and, like, the idea that they didn't discover this until he only had 6 months to live feels like negligence on the part of his employers, right? Mm-hmm. So my hope is that they've discovered that he has cancer, but they're having doctors lie to him that it's terminal, so that, like, Hanawa can have an excuse to, like, discharge him from the Daidoji on, like, compassionate release grounds. And then Haruka will immediately make him go to a doctor. He'll be like, actually, we can cure this. But it's going to mean we have to, like, cut off your leg or something. And then he'll get to live, like, a happy, retired life. If they could take out an eye, actually, so he could match Majima, that'd be sick. But that's my theory. I
can see the vision.
The vision is Hanawa cares about this guy and wants to help him, but knows the only way that he can help him is if he tricks him into thinking he's going to die for real.
Yes.
And this ties into I don't know that I believe that these people will kill Kiryu.
Yes.
I think there are a lot of ways, storytelling-wise, in which they should. not just for like the future health of the series and him not always being a shadow on it, but also just like in terms of his narrative arc. But I also don't know, especially given that this game seems to be made by people who very much sort of felt like we don't want to leave him behind and we have to give him a better ending. That makes me wonder if they're really going to be willing to do it.
Yeah. We'll have to see.
Yeah. My lean is no right now. He's never going to be able to fight again, but my lean is that I don't think they're going to let him die. Oh, one final cancer thing. Ichiban gets so pissed about it. About, like, the Daidoji and, like, why are they still letting him work? And, like, shouldn't he see a doctor? And that works on the level of Ichiban being, like, a stand-in for me.
Yeah.
But, like, Ichiban does not know this man.
I mean, I think he would get mad at anybody who said that.
I just sort of noticed it as I was doing it. I was like, man, like, he is feeling really, like, personally... And it, like,
I don't know. I felt like that was in character for Ichiban. Not even, like, you know, he clearly respects Kiryu, right?
Right.
And there is this aspect of, like, oh, he's not he is a fallible human being, this person that I really only thought about as, like, a symbol as well.
That's true.
But I think that if anybody had said that, Ichiban would have been like, what the frick are you doing? Go to the hospital.
I think it is just building on the, like he mentions Kiryu in his like proposal, right? Like I was like, man, this guy.
I thought that was funny. That was just the writers.
I love that. Like I'm in pretty good shape, but like Kiryu could probably kick my butt. I just found like, oh, like this guy you met twice seems to have a really outsized impact on you.
For what it's worth, he did, the second time they met was a particularly important beat for Ichiban in that arc. And
it's fine.
You know,
it's
so
working. That. I'm just clocking it as like some of this is working on the level of like me, the player, and like might not track quite as closely if I really thought about Ichiban.
Sure.
Which is fine.
Did you get the Kiryu pigeon lore?
I did. I don't know what that was a reference to.
It's
that
not
felt like some kind of reference. I was like, I don't know.
I think it's just he's had sub stories in the last 7 years that we haven't been privy to.
I love that. I do want to go back and say the combat system is so much improved from 7.
Yeah. Yes.
That I really feel like going back and playing 7 would feel like what going back and playing Yakuza 3 feels like.
Yeah.
It's like it's so much better. And I haven't even unlocked all of it, and it's so much better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Just having like being able to move and having like the directionality and having more interaction between the characters and not getting kicked by a random enemy when you run past them to hit a enemy that's further away. That's the main thing that I'm happy is gone.
Can you get a triple batter up?
A triple batter up?
Like, I can punch a character and the other character can punch them, but can I get a third character to punch them?
Yes, I think that if you hit someone at someone else, and then they knock them down, you can get someone to then hit the knockdown. Okay,
but I want them to just punch them in a circle.
No, I don't think quite like that.
Man.
Some good sub-stories.
Yep. I've liked some of the sub-stories that kind of recur. I've appreciated that.
Yeah.
Like, you've probably gotten a bunch of the, like, you know, TV to film director.
Yes.
I liked the directors coming together in, like, a culmination of the two. That was quite good.
Have you gotten the guy who's throwing shaved ice up in the air yet?
Yes, but we haven't finished it. We figured out how the babies are going to help him.
Yeah. But the bringing the baby men into this sub-story was such a swerve. It was so good.
Have you sung Bakamitai?
Yes.
Mommy!
The dog, yes.
That was so emotional. I was like, who's it going to be? Probably Pocket Circuit Racer. And when it was his dog, I was like, no!
You unlock a number more songs after you finish this chapter also. Just so
good, because I already unlocked the second judgment. I think Ichiban's judgment is better, which is not surprising because he's the original. But
interestingly, the English dub, they just shouldn't have done this. They just should have let them be out of tune. But they use auto-tune.
Oh.
Which I think is actually the problem with it, not the performances. Machine Gun Kiss is particularly egregious.
That sucks. Machine Gun Kiss is like one of my very favorites.
It's like, why have you done this to his voice? Just let him be slightly out of tune. That's fine. Yeah. Like, whatever. So that's my karaoke complaint for the English dub. I don't think it's on the actors. I think that someone made a weird decision to auto-tune it. So. Also, cruising around on the putting on the auto cruise on the surfer, the Segway, and listening to tunes. Very Final Fantasy 15 core.
Wow. Did you see there's an English radio show?
Yeah, I haven't listened to it yet, though.
We were complaining, Emma and I were complaining about there being no subtitles for the Japanese radio show, but there's also an English radio show.
Yeah. I don't think they're the same, though. So.
Probably not, but that's okay. I'm thinking about doing an X thoughts and X hours on this.
That sounds good.
Because I have a bunch of thoughts. Spoilers. Ichiban Frogger is canon. RGG wrote a protag who isn't a virgin challenge. Flip Flops. Dynamax. So, more coming soon. Yeah, so more on that. More on that. But when do I get the karaoke track, The Boys Are Back in Town?
That would be good. They should put that in there.
I feel like that's worth the licensing fee.
In the English version, they should just replace Judgment with The Boys Are Back in Town.
Hell Stew. Replace Hell Stew with The Boys Are Back in Town. Sorry.
Yeah, Hell Stew's not a good song.
It's funny, though. Okay, we should probably cut it off soon.
Yes. Anyway, I finished chapter 5. That's where I am.
I assume about halfway through 4.
I'll save it for next time. There's some stuff in chapter 5, despite me clicking with it more, that I'm also taking, being like, I don't know about this one, RGT.
We'll find out.
So look forward to that.
Well, listeners, thanks for tuning in to this super-sized 6-week recap here at Talk This. 7-week recap at Talk This.
Yep. It's dangerous to podcast alone.
If you enjoyed the show and you have thoughts to share about games you've been playing, your favorite Like a Dragon karaoke song, how much you love that weird little conversation about being a taxi driver that takes place in the bar. Did you see that?
Oh, I love their little conversations. They're so funny.
The entire the taxi driver felt like an Easter egg just for me. Anyway, if you think the Warriors games are good, if you remember when Emma talked about Cold Steel at the beginning of this episode, because I don't. If you think Emma should make a supersized Cold Steel recap episode based on all of her check-ins, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog, featuring long-running series, Click My Boyfriend, and Split Screen, and I'm probably going to do an X Thoughts and X Hours on like my first 17 or 18 hours of this game. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you should subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This.
Next week, we're talking about Onimusha and Baldur's Gate 3.
That's bad timing for this episode. There's no, Baldur's Gate 3 is a game I would theoretically like to play, but no. Absolutely not. We're giving me a pass. We're giving, the future Madelyn will play that game.
Yeah. Fair
enough. So look forward to that, and then to my side quest in a couple of weeks, which really should be about, love in games or something for Valentine's Day, but I'll think about it.
Do you want to sign us off?
Yes. Listeners, this week, I hope that when you and your 3 friends take the evil god to space, you can do a triple batter up combo.